Hey everyone, it's Sam from the Danger Planet, and today I'm joined once again by Landon and Haku of Bad Foe Haku. Hey guys,
Hi,
Yo!
Sam.
and Danger Planet Doug.
Hello, Mr. Barrows. How are you tonight?
And today we're going to be doing another one of our keyword tier lists, and this time we're focusing on Lady Justice and the Marshal keyword.
Alright guys, Lady Justice is one of the oldest characters in Malifaux and has a ton of lore behind her. That being said, here's a quick overview from Mr. Dice over at DefectiveDice to give you sort of the deeds of what she's about, and of course if you want to know more, we strongly recommend you check out his two-part series on Lady Justice, which will be linked below. So what do you got for us, Mr. Dice?
Lady Justice has a mysterious past, and very few people know much about her time before the Guild. What they do know is that she heads up the Death Marshals, one of the Guild's special divisions that focuses on hunting the undead and the resurrectionists. Though apparently blind, Justice uses necromantic magic to sense her surroundings and fight as a skilled swordswoman. After failing to stop most of the most powerful resurrectionists in the city for many years, Justice finally hunted down and killed the mysterious necromancer named Nicodem. But that wasn't before the Guild's coroner, Dr. McMorning, was revealed to be a necromancer himself, and Lady Justice holds herself personally responsible that he was able to hide right under her nose.
Thanks a ton, Mr. Dice. So everybody make sure to check out Defective Dice, again linked below. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, and now that we've gotten some feedback, and as well as we've been doing this for a little bit, we've decided, especially for Lady J, who is a master, who are very different based on their two keywords, that we are changing how the tier list looks. So this is the new look. We got rid of sometimes higher, kind of. And I think to make up for that, we'll probably put more things in Never Higher, and Never Higher isn't as harsh as Never Higher anymore.
And this is, as you can see, basically just to separate out the original and the title. A lot of the time when we said something was a sometimes higher, we meant that it was very close to one title. So we might also see more auto includes here because so it's a trade-off. We'll see how this format works. Please give us some feedback. Let us know in the comments or in our Discord if you like this version. But without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so 33, the new monster of burning. This model is unbelievably cracked. I don't care which version of Lady J you're playing. I think you auto include it. You can filter to never have the Black Joker ever again in your deck, and also just normally ping a guy 1 and J2 and J1 your perfectly good scheme strat runner, which the crew doesn't really have access to. The whole move 6 incorporeal 8 wounds. He's just hyper cost efficient. His only quote unquote downside is not really having a separate attack like you would sometimes see on some of the other marshals for his melee. You just have the pine box, but that's fine.
Her. I think it's a female, Mr. Haku.
It's dead. It has no gender.
I think it's a void beast. I don't know.
No, is it 33 was I think 33 canonically is a female that Lady J and 33 got into a bunch of fights, and so she pine boxed to 33, and then when shit really hit the fan, she had to bring her back.
Yeah, 33 is I think the 33rd Death Marshal ever.
Yeah.
I think that's the point of her.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Lore.
Get Lord, nerd.
So yeah, I think there's no arguing. This guy is a monster, slippery, incorporeal, pine box at stat 3, and to be honest, just it's a fine gun. That's it.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I mean I agree with everything you're saying. I think this model is probably one of the strongest models to come out of the Malifaux Burns book. She's insane. She's great. She does a lot of stuff. She's got a good gun. Her movement tricks are really, really strong. Her passive abilities are really strong. I just think this model is the bee's knees. I would put it easily into auto include for both Lady J. Well, really, really hard in Lady J2, and probably still take it in Lady J1, in my opinion. Take it away, Mr. Poper.
I don't think it's literally auto include in Lady J1. It definitely is in Lady J2. I think with the Lady J1 list, I usually try to build towards probably doesn't really have a role for 33 just being a generically good model with very little synergy. Because like 8 stones is a lot of investment, and usually with Lady J1 I'm building a bit more around like horses and you know, more aggressive pieces than 33 is going to give you for that turn 1 you know, alpha strike type deal. And so I think for that reason 33 just is more of a pool match specific thing for me in Lady J1. Lady J2 obviously slam dunk.
Yeah, I'm actually with Landon on this one. I think Lady J2, like, it's so disgusting, like, doesn't even really bear talking about. But with Lady J1, she doesn't really care as much that you're burying stuff. The things that do care that you're burying stuff are things you don't necessarily want to hire with Lady J1. I mean, 33 is a generically good model, but I think there are very few models that are just generically good enough to be an always hire, and I don't think this is one of them. I think that she's probably, if we still use mostly hire, she'd be a mostly hire with Lady J1, but like, I can absolutely see pools where you just don't really care about having a movement 6 incorporeal model, and that's what she basically is in Lady J1. She's a movement 6 incorporeal model that like sometimes draws you the Black Joker or other low value cards.
It gets you your leap card. That's basically what
it's-
33 is for Lady
That's
J1.
fine.
It makes sure
That's
you have
it's a
your
lot
leap
of
card.
stones though.
It's
Mhm.
it's okay. Counterpoints, because I wholeheartedly agree with you guys are saying, and this is going to be the first example of the kind of quasi deficits of us doing it the way we're doing it. I also agree. I would have put it in mostly take. My main thing on why I have it slightly more towards auto include than pull or match specific is just because of that 2-card draw. Landon was talking about the horses. It's great to draw the ram so you can get your 4 cost one going faster, as well as getting the leap. There's so many low 6 cost TNs in that crew that I see it as actually having more value than a lawyer in a decent amount of the time, because you're getting 2 cards instead of 1. And the rest of the time, it's a model that, you know, moves around and is relevant.
I don't know. I think I prefer the Domador for like the slot that you usually get 33 in Lady J1, just because Lady J1 actually needs the healing a bit more.
All right, counterpoint. It's really funny with Pale Rider, because your ride-along model, Lady J, gets to move another couple inches.
That's true. That's kind of cute little synergy there. But like, I don't know. I mean, the big thing with 33 that I'm thinking about in Lady J1 is 8 stones. Like, that's a lot of stones for this. And I think there'll be times when you want it and times when you won't. Like, there'll be times when that extra movement and the card draw is really, really important. And there'll be times when you're just like, I really wish I had a Domador because I can't afford to put Lady J out there or she's just going to die.
All right. You know what? Fine. I'm willing to put it in pool specific because I agree with that argument. The problem is I feel like I'm going to end up with that a lot on things that aren't actually quote unquote pool or match specific, so more counterattack. But it is true that you aren't always hiring it. Whereas
She's really good in among the category of matchup pool specific.
Yeah.
Like, right at the top of that category.
Let's just go right into Death Marshal Recruiter. I think this is another kind of easy auto include for Lady J2. Does everything you want. It's the arguably best Pine Box after 33. You're going to need Pine Box stuff. Moves your crew at the beginning. All around good model. Sometimes, you know, makes a Death Marshal. Basically never. For J2, I would actually probably never hire this model. Without the fact that you're turning Pine Box into a real action, it's kind of just bad. And it doesn't fit into the whole, oh, I kill everything that you're having going on with J1 that you really, really want to focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that the word of the Haku?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on both these counts. When I was, my first master that I ever learned the game with and that I did a lot of demos with was Lady J1. And I don't think I ever hired a Death Marshal recruiter into Lady J1. And then on the flip side of that, for all the Lady J2 games that I've played, I don't think I've ever not hired at least one Death Marshal recruiter. I mean, just having a stat 6 weapon that doesn't really have to worry about any negs or anything on it once you've kind of captured a model is so good. Plus, it's usually going to get a free focus if Lady J2 decides to drop a coffin at the beginning of the turn. She also gets to beat up on whatever 33 captures. I really like this model a lot in Lady J2, and I think, you know, most of the time you're not going to be spending 8 points on it in Lady J1. That's kind of my take. Mr. Pope?
Yeah, I'd say that's just about right. With Lady J1, you tend to go a lot more elite, whereas with Lady J2, you end up with a lot more of the minion stuff. And so Haku might say you never get the Death Marshal, but it's reasonably possible that you'll get a Death Marshal just because, at least in the list I tend to play, everything, or like half your points are going to be models that are viable for it. Like if you're taking a pair of these like I do, like they can turn each other into Death Marshals too. So like that comes up.
I mean, it's
That
just
is
them and
actually-
Domadors, right?
That is actually...
Yeah, them
the-
and Domadors I'll spend like, 30 points on, and I'll be happy to.
I guess.
That's the one use case where I've actually had that come up, Pope, where one of them turned the other into a Death
The
Marshal.
Death Marshal, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, it's not that it never comes up. It's not why you're hiring them, but you'll be certainly happy to do it when it's like, oops, so you don't actually score cursed objects because he's a Death Marshal, not dead.
It comes up when you're playing Perdita too.
That too, but that's not what we're talking about today. These guys are really tanky. I like to put coats on them. It's not something we really discussed prior to this, but like when they're defense 6, hard to wound, armor 1, people are looking at you and they're like, why am I playing against Von Stuck?
And they also work really well with expert marksman as well. The built-in building in ignoring concealment, ignoring
Yeah, and like between crit
line of
strike
sight
and
is
armor
fine.
piercing, when you're shooting armored targets, you get basically a 50-50 on getting to push through your normal damage track. So it's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually coats are my go-to for them when we are hiring them. But that's kind of the call out I wanted to make, because these things are living, so they synergize really well with Lady J2's healing on top of the Domador healing to just be a really reliable front line.
Yeah, I think you guys have pretty much covered it. I mean, you take these guys in Lady J2 because they're like why the crew works. Like they make getting buried like actually devastating and deadly rather than just inconvenient and annoying. They're they push your dudes around. They kind of do everything you want them to do and nothing you don't. But in Lady J1, there's just not quite enough synergy. So yeah, I agree.
All right. Death Marshals. Again, I'm never hiring this model in J1. It's just worse recruiter, and it doesn't even last for the crew. Also, defense 4 is a joke. Hard to kill, whatever. J2, I think I'm also close to almost never hiring them now in a refined J2, having played it more. Having played with them a few times, it is nice to have the extra coffin markers. So there are matchups, I think, where you definitely just want more pine box options to make more coffin markers. That's going to be their main use. They're also not terrible at just walking around the boards. They're not amazing at it, but they're not bad at it. They get a little bit of extra movement, and the whole gaining fast becomes hilariously more common. So 3 AP for 5 cost models can actually bump up their value hugely. They still just die, which is a little unfortunate. Not that unfortunate, because you only invested 5 soul stones into them. So there are definitely schemes of strats where you want a much more spread out crew, or maybe the crew you're playing against invites you to spread out more. Maybe they just can't kill, a 6 wound model because they just rely on ping damage. So just having more models out is just better. And I can definitely see why you would take it. I just feel like current lists kind of refine them out.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yep.
It's interesting that you make that point, and that's something that I've run into as well. Is when I was making my initial Lady J2 lists, I was like, oh my god, upside of 3 AP plus pine box matters again, plus hard to wound, let's fucking go, boys. And I tried jamming a bunch in there. And as I played more and more Lady J2 lists, or as I played more and more with Lady J2, I started to shave down the number of the vanilla Death Marshals, but I pretty much always kept 2 Death Marshal recruiters in the list. So I think that speaks very strongly to what you were just describing. I mean, pine box matters, which is great, and sometimes they get fast. I lean more into these things if I know I'm in against a Rezzers player or something. Obviously, they're a bit better, but I tend to agree with what you're saying, Haku. I think that's about on point. So, What do you got for us, Pope?
Yeah, the typical number of these in a list that I'm playing for either version is 0. The amount that I will sometimes play in Lady J2 is, 0 to 2 as opposed to 0 to 0 in Lady J1. Because in places where you do need bodies, like usually you just go for the recruiters because they're just a lot tankier and you'll always have them on the board. But it's worth noting that even like min 3 beaters usually need 3 AP to kill a Death Marshal, without any healing in between. So it's not like these things aren't tanky, but it's annoying because being undead means they don't get any synergy from Domadors. I mean, you get the, obey off Domadors, but you can't heal them. And so that combined with their kind of awkward attack profiles where they have, a melee attack with no triggers and a gun that doesn't ignore anything, it's kind of tough to get value off of them other than trying to use them to interact, but they got to be close to enemies in order to be able to interact well. Otherwise, they're just like move 5 dudes. So I don't tend to love them, but I could see a use case where I would bring 1 or 2 of these over like the jury in specific pools for Lady J2. So like definitely towards the back end of that, but I think there's some use case for them there.
Dr. Barrow's Fishman.
Def Force sucks. Like, I want to like these guys. I like 5-stone significant models that can take 3 AP, but like Def 4 is bad. I don't like hard to kill as the only defensive tech. It's not reliable. I guess it's not the only defensive tech. They are hard to wound, but they're slightly tanky. But the game does not. The game of Malifaux generally does not favor the kind of models that Death Marshals are, which is like cheap, low impact minions. I can see them in Lady J2 because of there's some synergy there, but like I'm never super excited to hire them. I would like rather something existed at the price point between them and recruiters. So I'm not going to say never hire in Lady J2 like I would in Lady J1, but there's a lot of stuff that's going to go to the left of them in that matchup pool specific tray.
Yeah, this is the one time where I wonder if we actually almost put them in never hire, just because never hire has to get diluted a little bit more, I think, than truly never. But I think just because of the economy of Lady J1, literally will never hire these. I like it there.
Yeah.
So, well, to Domadors. Domadors in J1 are interesting, but I am going to make the decision where I'm still probably never hiring them. Command Corps, I don't really think you're hiring any undead truly in the list of J1 I know about, or the ones
Pale Rider?
Yeah, but Pale Rider isn't
bro.
the model I did. No, I like.
You're crazy.
It's
Don't worry,
no.
Pope. You'll get your
There
chance to fight 'em
are
back.
lawyers.
Don't worry, Pope. You'll get it.
We're much more important. I think the reason I am putting in never hire is because even though I can see you maybe taking one of these guys in J1, it's definitely possible. I'm still going to err on the side where I wouldn't do it. They die super easily. The crew doesn't have too much soul stones to toss around just on a guy who is obeying, and maybe heal 2ing a couple people, but probably not, because he'll get left behind by the way you would play the crew. So that's my logic on why I think it hovers the border of never hire and maybe you can get 1 or 2 in. For J2, it's an easy always hire, and for my mind, a lot more things are undead, mostly enemies though. But the main thing you're using this for is actually the healing in J1. It is utterly ridiculously good in J1 because of this.
About J2? You keep saying J1.
Yeah, I am. I don't know why I did
He's
that.
having a stroke, ladies and gentlemen, live on air tonight.
It becomes much more important in J1 to do the healing.
You're still learning it.
As well as fucking A. Much more important in J2 to do the healing. You also are actively using Decay probably a bit more, and part of that is because it ends up staying with the crew a lot better, and the crew kind of bunches and just moves around differently than you would see actually in J1. Command Corps gets a bit more value because you can offensively use it a bit easier when everyone is more than likely undead, as well as the aura of turning models into undead matters a lot more. So even if they get onto you, they now that aura is now a relevant thing, and it does seem to synergize really well with J2's crew. So I do like it a decent amount in J2, to the point where I would probably almost always hire one.
Wild. Is that the word of the Haku?
Yeah, that's my word.
All right. I think, I look at this model. My take on the Domador is that I would quite frankly rather have either a guild mage or a guild lawyer than this. And in my brain space, it kind of takes up that same support model slot. I know that there's an argument to be made for Porque no los dos and like bring the Domador and also like either a Stewie or a guild mage or whatever other utility piece. But in my mind, because I tend to play a lot more Lady J2 than Lady J1, I would rather fill those points with the aforementioned kind of already expensive Death Marshal recruiter. And those are chonky boys at 8 points apiece. So if you're going to bring 2 of those, it kind of limits your creativity options. If you're also going to come to bear with like some Bloodline cloaks, which obviously no respectable guild player leaves home without a pair of Bloodline cloaks, or at least one, So I don't know. I kind of struggle with this guy. I liked him a heck of a lot more before the Burns book dropped. I thought he was really, really good for all the reasons that Haku is saying. I guess my take on it is I agree with the points that Haku are making, but in my brain, he's just not as good a support option. And I don't want to be in a space where I'm taking like 2 guild mages or an extra one like that. I know that Haku often will do that, but he's a better player than I am and doesn't need the extra punchiness to make up for his play mistakes. So like I do. That's kind of my take on him. So like, yeah, it's like what Haku said, but turned down like 30% basically would be my opinion. Mr. Pope?
All right, so what Haku said, but like doubled, because definitely auto include for J2. I run 1 to 2 of these in most of my J2 lists. The healing is just really, really efficient. Like I always got really upset whenever I had to play against Hoffman, and he would just like target one of his guys and flip any card he wanted. He'd like flip a black joker, heal the guy for 3. You really didn't have any say about it. These guys just do that for slightly less. They only heal for 2, but it's still TN-less healing from 8 inches away as opposed to Hoffman's melee. It just kind of works. And then on top of that, it's also just a really good attack if you want to like attack enemies with it, like WYRD. And so sometimes you're not only attacking enemies with blasting onto your own guys and healing them. Like it's a really efficient action when you can like not spend the whole game walking with these guys, which is I think what Haku's problem is with them in 1. In 1, I think they play a bit more of the support role. So I can see where Haku thinks they're less important, but I think they're still really good there for just like handing out focus to Pill Rider turn 1 before you ride in and just go to town with, a 7, which is a reasonable card, but it's still good. And then, they still bring some healing with the like Men Trigger on that, or just being able to heal J1 herself, because Juggernaut's really expensive as far as like healing goes. So having, the TN-less healing is just really good. Sometimes I think they're like probably right below 30, above or below 33 in the pools match specific for J1, but I think they're honestly about the same frequency of higher for me there. Actually, I hire it more than 33 in J1, I think, but that is simply my take. I think the healing's really good, and giving focus out for your Alpha Strike is also really good. Which you might say, well, why not do it with Steward? The Steward has more TNs.
Yeah, these guys are like kind of weird for me to evaluate, because every time I look at their card, I'm like, God, this model's terrible. And whenever I see it on the board, I'm like, wow, that model really overperformed. And yet in my brain never is like, maybe it's not terrible. Every time I reset to like, God, these things are bad. But they do tend to overperform, and I think that Landon actually kind of hit on it, which is that they are models that do the thing that they need to do, usually without a significant investment in cards, which in this keyword is something you want. If I'm playing Lady Justice, I don't want to be pouring a ton of cards into like making my support models do the thing I hired them for. So I would say I would probably split the difference from you guys and put one. Well, I don't know. I'm okay with always include for Lady J2, but it would be at the bottom of always include. But I would say with like below 33, but still something somewhat matchup or pool specific in J1, just because they can do a lot of different things that you want them to do, and they don't usually need to worry too much about cards.
All right, I'm going to defend my opinion and not change anything because I'm in control now. I
right, well, I'm the boss,
absolutely
and everybody else can suck
disagree
it.
with both of you on Domadors and J1, mainly because I see their goal as totally different. J2, I'll admit, I don't play it the best. It's a slightly different mindset. J1, my girl. Go in, alpha strike, murder things. That's always been my shtick. In J1, in order to do that, focus is nice. It's not the main thing you want. And even then, a 6 for Steward versus a 7 is huge. The fact that it's a bonus action on Steward, so it could walk, do it turn 2, also huge. Costs less. I'll ignore that because I actually don't even really want to compare it with Steward. I'm comparing it to Lawyer, which is giving my guy shielded, similar-ish to healing if I'm alphaing, and even kind of similar-ish even after because they have to hit those models, as well as Severes. It's all about toolsing for Severes on Alpha Strikes. You absolutely need them, and it's by and large way more important than just flipping a second card when attacking. And you can still sometimes just flip the Obey. Obviously, 9 of Mask is a much more tilting thing, but sometimes you just draw an extra card with them, which is also hugely important. So I'm going to defend the hell out of keeping it in Never Hire, slash maybe a little bit, just because that's our new Never Hire. But I truly think you're almost always going with a Lawyer over this in J1, if not
so
two
I'm picking
lawyers.
a lawyer and one of these in J1.
That's what I'm saying, if not
mostly
two
because
lawyers.
the reason why I don't like 2 lawyers is because you got to have someone who flips a card into the yard anyways to get the tools card that you want out, right? And these guys just do that reasonably well.
You have other ways of doing that, but yeah, whatever. We'll get to that. I'm going to defend it. It's a really close border between Never Hire and sometimes.
It's the top of. It is the top end of quote unquote Never Hire.
I'll never play with it though, so I'm keeping it there. On to Exorcist.
Well,
The
Haku,
true
your
Never
opinion
Hire.
is the only one that matters.
The true Never Hire. Both crews. I don't even understand this model. Don't know what it does. Don't know its purpose. Never taking it. There are so many better options in Guild. This is not worth 6 soulstones ever.
Okay. Rather concise. Is that the wisdom of the Haku?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I'll expound upon that a small bit, I guess. So it feels to me like when I look at this model's card, it is a rather underwhelming / poorly aged version of Countertech. And let me explain that for a second. And what I mean is it feels like what you want out of this model when you bring it in is you're expecting it to do a particular Countertech job and not have to invest too many points and also get a significant model out of it. I think where it falls flat on its face is that you, quite frankly, would never hire this model over a Domador, over a Guild Mage, over Stewie, over a Guild Lawyer. Like I just can't see scenarios where instead of spending points on those models, I'm spending points on an Exorcist, even when he's supposed to be good. And what I would mean by that is obviously his exorcism triggers and how he's able to, on paper, combat summons, right? Combat summons and pick up scrap. I have played him a couple times when he's been good into the Mayfang 2 scrap machine, because you can just go up and take away a scrap before they blip to it with the majority of their team. But even in those scenarios, when I've brought him into the games where he's supposed to be good, or like a game against like Kurai 1, for example, it's like, you're supposed to be good there. Like, this is what you do. I've still found myself almost rather having a Guild Mage or Stewie or a Domador. And so I think kind of for that reason, I probably put him in the same place as Haku, but that's my reasoning behind why I would do that. So Pope, why don't you tell me why I'm wrong?
I'd love to, but I can't. Let me tell you why you're right, that you missed.
Well, that's the first time for anything, I guess.
So right? Exorcists are, as you said, a model that on paper looks like they're kind of like a tech piece model. And actually looking at this card again, I didn't realize they had Gunfighter, which is cool, but it doesn't solve the core problem of like, when you're hiring a tech piece, what you're intending to do is either solve a specific problem of the matchup or try and slow down your opponent's kind of value engine that they're doing. that your counterattack's going to try and, fuddle with. These guys aren't really tanky enough to stay on the board as a problem solver for very long at, defense 5, 6 wounds, hard to wound being like it. If they're a problem for your opponent, they just kind of kill them. And then on top of all of that, they ignore friendly fire, at least on their crossbow, but they don't ignore like cover or concealment, and they're stat 5. So in order to do the job they need to do, if your opponent actually cares about you shooting at them, like, it's very easy for them to make you miss at, stat 5, not ignoring a plethora of things. While on top of that, usually needing a specific non-built-in trigger to do the job you brought them for. Unless you're, of course, just bringing them to shoot 2, 3, 4s at, like, a ghost. But if you're just bringing them to do damage, other stuff does damage more reliably. So...
And even when you need that exorcism trigger, most of the time to get the hit off with that trigger, you're going to have to flush a really high card out of your hand, which you would rather be using for 33, or for Lady J, or for Pale Rider, or for any of your other big boys.
But
that's
the real talk is just that, like, the only unique thing they have on their card compared to, like, the rest of the crew's suite against it is Barrier to the Other World, and that ability just doesn't usually work. So, like, Lone Marshal having Exorcism at a better stat on a bonus with, like, way more target access just makes these guys pretty irrelevant. Don't hire them.
Yeah, I mean, they're models that, like, I see what they're trying to do, right? There's this cute little sub-theme here of, like, make the enemy's models undead, so now all my cool anti-undead synergy works. Or you could just hire the large number of extremely efficient killers that don't care if the target's undead or not, and then feed them good cards and have them kill your opponent's models. Like, it lets you jump. It's a way of jumping through hoops to do something that the crew could just do without jumping through hoops, and that's why they don't work. And it's kind of a shame because it's a neat little mechanic, like turn somebody undead and then turn on all your anti-undead synergy. But the anti-undead synergy isn't strong enough for me to justify hiring a 6-stone model that can maybe turn it on 50% of the time, maybe, and then really do nothing else. It's also like, it just needs to hit with attacks, and the attacks needs to hit with their stat 5. So no good.
Yeah, if you printed 6s on every single instance of 5 on this card, I don't know if I'd take it, but it'd at least be a much closer consideration.
Yeah,
Damn.
literally every defense willpower included, because, oh my god, this guy legitimately sometimes gets one shot. It's funny.
That would make
Bad.
Barrier
That'd
to
be
the
not
Outer
doing
World. That would make Barrier to the Other World a Aura 6?
No, I don't think I'd include that in my 6s everywhere just because, practical concerns. But, that also would be neat, I guess.
No, that ability is not really a thing.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I don't
now
know.
Actually,
It's
a very
fine.
good model. A very, very good model. Let's talk
I
about.
don't even think it'd be very, very good. Oh, right, Lone Marshal. Okay, yeah, Lone Marshal. It's interesting. It's definitely pool and match specific in J2. Definitely more than Death Marshal is. There are some things it's obviously really good at. You want an exorcism trigger? Have it on a stat 6 bonus action. Like, it's just a clearly better model for almost all instances. Stat 7 is kind of ridiculous, especially with running gun on a horse. That's ruthless. Does a lot of really good things. My question is where am I putting it in J1? J2, I guess I'll talk about why it's not auto-include. It's mostly just because the lists get tighter and it's not necessarily synergizing with what the crew does in and of itself. Although it can be very good by itself and good against specific things and good in good matchups, it's not an inherent working with the crew, and it's one of the earlier cards you can cut to make room for something else, like more Domadors, and build towards a more synergistic keyword. And I know a lot of you folks love that. As for J1, you really truly are playing it just for how much value you get with stat 7s. Range attacking is also really good, and moving around the map is really good in J1. That being said, I don't think it's going to be an auto-include for me, just because its bigger brother, Pale Rider, normally takes its spot. But you end up seeing it a lot more, I think, in J1 than you ever do in J2. And for good reason. Very good model, but just you're probably not playing it in every list.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yeah, that's the word of the Haku.
So when I first started playing, this was like my MVP model. Like I loved playing with this model when I was first learning how to play Malifaux, because it, to me, represents a very effective, very killy mobile turret that's super forgiving because you have unimpeded on a run and gun model that allows you to just apply pressure from almost anywhere on the map, and also ignores concealment, which is great with 2 amazing triggers. So kind of as a novice at Malifaux, I had a lot of success just simply putting a focus on this model and pointing it in the direction of the thing I wanted to die. And then as I got more reps in, and as Malifaux, quite frankly, became... Sorry, Talk is trying to eat my leg because I'm no longer giving her dog treats. So if you can hear a tiny little pit bull in the background, that's Pupset Madam. So as I played more and I got more reps in, what I started to realize is that I really liked it as a single pressure presence on the opposite side of the board of where I was applying Lady J to their face in like Lady J1 lists, for example. And then if I ever just needed something that didn't care about concealment, or I was going up against a crew that had a lot of like concealment, like Sam for a while loved playing Zip 1 in GG2. So I had to deal with sputtering exhaust all the time, which was really fucking annoying. So that was like a thing that I would bring in to shoot gremlins off the table with. I love this model. I think for me, I always try to hire it. In Lady J1, it's probably for me an auto include. In Lady J2, it's probably the very high end of specific matchups, but it's just because I freaking love this model. So that's my take. What do you got, Pope?
You know, I'm going to agree with you twice today, Doug. I actually think this model makes auto include for me in J1.
Can't make a habit out of that, Pope. You're going to make
just
bad decisions
because,
eventually.
Like, I like to joke with people that Lone Marshal is a versatile modeling guild that just happens to get a discount in Lady J. Because he's got a lot of different tech on him that's really good, which is why he definitely comes into consideration for the matchup specific in J2, though he doesn't exactly do the game plan I want him to. The reason why I like him so much in J1 is because he has such amazing reach to try and soften up any kind of like deterrence your opponent might take to you just diving in turn 1. Like if they've got a bunch of support models, you just like start by killing those with Lone Marshal so Jay doesn't have to waste attacks putting into them. Because yeah, with the running gun 14-inch gun, on most deployments that means he's shooting something turn 1. And if you can feed him focus beforehand, great. If you're doing it the first activation of the game to kill something important, also great. Like, he just has a great amount of reach, which you always want if you're doing something resembling an aggressive game plan. And at stat 7, he also can just eat some of your mediocre cards shooting into things for crit strike, like that awkward 6 of rams. You're like, what am I going to do with this? Bam, crit strike on Lone Marshal because your opponent didn't want to cheat in the stat 7. Also, Maime's just a surprisingly good trigger when you're making this many attacks.
Surprisingly, Maime's disgusting. What?
Yeah, it's just an obviously good trigger.
Yeah, what?
Sure. We'll go with obviously good then. I don't know. A lot of times when you aren't putting out so many attacks, you know, Maime's just going to be like, oh, I pitch a 1 or a 2, whatever. I don't know. I think it has less value sometimes, but anyways, it's good gun. You want that in your aggressive game plan. I think it should be auto include for J1, at least the way that I'm going to be building J1 lists.
What about J2?
It is good where it's at in J2. I'm not really going to be hiring it in my main list. There's some synergies available if you're going to be doing like the waste an AP, giving out focus with the coffin thing. I don't think that's like an action you should be taking on J2 in most games on turn 1, but like if you want to, you probably should be hiring this guy.
Yeah,
That's
so
my thought.
you guys ready for a hot take?
Sure.
This guy is the Tarmogoyf of Malifaux. He is just a really efficiently costed beater who doesn't really need a lot from you, doesn't ask a lot from you. He has good stats. He doesn't like need you to set him up a bunch. He just goes out there and he kills stuff. But over time, the game has moved away from that kind of things being powerful in that way. And there's a lot of like weird synergy stuff right now that is super strong that he doesn't really feed into. Like Lady J2 is in this case, I guess Lady J2 is like Ragavan or whatever. It's like just a really powerful synergy driven crew that's like much stronger than what Lady J1 is doing. But when you need a Tarmogoyf, it's going to be a big fat creature that you paid not enough mana for, and it's going to kill your opponent, and you're going to be really happy with it. So, and I think that's kind of what Lady J is. She's a beater. She's uncomplicated. She wants good cards, so she wants other models in her crew to not need good cards, and this guy does not need cards from you. He is going to do his job pretty much regardless. So, yeah, I'm actually totally happy with where he is in both cases. I just wanted to kind of provide my weirdly inflected little spin on it.
I don't know.
You just got
I
to
will
make
say
sure
this
that
about
they don't reprint that rider into the ground and devalue all of them, so that my full art riders don't go from hundreds of dollars to $45.
Or
Thanks,
you-
Wizards of the Coast.
Or you
Thanks so much
draft
for
a
that.
hollow one in the middle of a tournament, even though you're not in those colors, just because you know it'll sell for thousands of dollars.
You're
Yeah,
gonna say this guy's low card burden, but I'm gonna tell you, like Tarmogoyf, he dies to Doomblade, right? Like,
Yeah,
if
he
you
does.
just put 3 min-3 attacks into this guy, he does just fucking flop and die.
Yeah, that's
so
which
you
is
have
why-
cards
yeah.
to defend him.
Which is why I'm not the biggest fan of him being in auto include in J1. This is also another instance where I think
I don't know what the hell else you're hiring if you're not hiring him in J1. But we'll
Yeah,
get
right.
there, I guess. You hire both.
you hire
obviously.
both. Yeah.
Unironically, you hire both.
Unironically, you hire both.
Yeah,
I'm not,
no, I mean,
I'm
that
not
makes
really
sense.
disagreeing. I think you have more of a tech piece option in J1 for what your alternate beaters are. I think most of the time, I'm going to give this to Landon. I think most of the time, it's always going to be Lone Marshal. I think there are instances where it's not Lone Marshal. But the way we have the tier list now, I think that putting it in an auto include is actually fine, especially because I wanted 33 in auto include. So using that logic, I think Lone Marshal being auto include is a really great start for anybody who's picking up J1.
It's quite literally the definition of a point and click model, which is kind of what I was getting at too, right? Sam said it's just good vanilla value. It's amazing as a piece to manipulate on the board when you're starting to learn Malifaux and you don't quite understand card strengths, and you just point that gun at things and they die. You know,
Right.
That's about as complicated as it is.
For that reason, though, when you get to higher levels of play, I think his value definitely plummets. Landon pointed out how frail he is, especially in this GG where everyone's going around with a lot of beaters, with a lot of mobility. It wouldn't be necessarily hard to catch this guy out and just kill him.
Well, I mean, he does have a 14-inch gun, right? That ignores concealment, so he can plink from a relatively far away. But I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as you run into more skilled opponents, they will look at that model, understand the threat pressure that it represents, and have a business plan for dealing with it. Versus if you're playing maybe in a less experienced pool, people might not fully understand the significance of that stat 7 carbine. So he might be able to chew through a couple of 5 or 6 soulstone models for basically free real estate over turns 1 and 2, you know? Because I've seen that happen a lot as well. So.
Yeah, I think it's a monster in mid to low layer play. I think in higher tier play, you're going to see a lot more people play around concealing, line of sight blocker, so he's not really 14. He has to come closer. And the fact that his bonus action doesn't move him is becoming much more of a hindrance. I think not realistically, the 3 AP models are kind of like God right now, and we have enough of them that most crews can fill out with 3 AP models. But Guild has always been a little hurting for that.
He's
Yeah,
like
I
a
think-
2.5. He's a 2.5.
Because he has running gun.
Also Startle's a real action. Like,
Oh,
I agree.
yeah, it's a
Startle's
real.
good.
I'm just saying it's not a movement. His 3 AP, his 2.5 is really running gun in my mind because he at least can still charge.
And
then
an, and an unimpeded 7-inch running gun. It's pretty fucking good.
yeah, it's having a threat range of 21 is kind of funny.
With 2 shots. A threat range of 21 with 2 shots.
Yeah.
I think we probably spent enough time talking
Yeah.
about him.
So onwards to Scale of Justice. Probably should have done this a little bit earlier. Significant Totem. Obviously auto include, because unless you're memeing.
You know, I wouldn't take him in Reckoning. I'm gonna throw that out there.
That's funny. There is I guess I guess there is technically a couple of reasons why you would not want a model that just says. Realistically, it's still fine. You can just have it in your backline, sometimes draw a card. Like literally hidden, and it won't come up unless you're already lost the game. That being said, he draws you a card. That's literally it. Significant model, draws you a card when he dies. Sometimes draws you a card while he's alive. Convenient. I don't think there's anything else to say about this.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. The things that stand out to me here are the fact that it's a significant totem. You obviously get him every game. Equality of Fate is probably the best thing written on this card. I agree with Haku. Negation Aura, sorry, that's the talk as well. Negation Aura can be really good, but oftentimes it's just an Equality of Fate machine, and sometimes, especially in GG3, like if you're in Cursed Objects or something, he can be an active detriment because they can throw a thing on him and try to pop him for a strategy point pretty easy. It's kind of my thought on him.
Yeah, defense 3 sucks. We talked about like defense 4 hard to wound sucking before. Defense 3 sucks. And I'm not going to tell you not to hire your totem, but there's some matchups where you're going to look at the board, you're going to look at your opponent's list, and you're going to go, did I really want to put this model on the board? Maybe I should have just left him in the case. And that's not going to happen often, but I feel like even if that happens in 5% of your games, it's worth the call out that maybe sometimes it's the right choice.
I think 5% is a bit generous, but yeah, most of the time there's a piece of terrain in your backline you can hide this behind, and it's worth taking.
5%. 5% is 1 in 20 games. It's going to be less than that. I mean, it's going to be sometimes, but it's not going to be.
I think it's funny that it literally is sometimes possible, but truly low percents.
I don't think 1 in 20 is terribly unreasonable, but that's fine. I'm willing to let that lie. I'm comfortable to move on.
Yeah, my only thought on this guy is remember that if your opponent isn't spending cards, you can shrug off on a Death Marshal for no condition, and then it reduces your hand so you can then draw a card.
Oh, more than that, you just actually can charge one of your own models, cheat for the attack, cheat for the defense, then bonus action, draw the card, right? Like if you've got
sure.
Ace 4, right? You're not using either of those cards.
I'm just pointing out little synergies.
Yeah, this is not infrequently where I use to get cards in bid for lawyers. It's definitely a thing. All right, onwards to Jury. Jury is a very interesting model. I think he's got power crept very obviously. Slash's playstyle is kind of going out. Still a very decent model. J2, I think it's definitely cuttable, but I think a good chunk of the time you're probably still bringing it. Built-in obeys are really good, especially only at an 8 instead of a 9 or whatever. Ancient Words is obviously just a good ability. Henchman does a lot of damage back when it gets hit. Nothing's really built in. The main reason you bring him, and is almost auto-include in J2, is mostly just the damaging people that are buried / summons. It's really nice. There's a good chunk. I think a good chunk of the time I can almost be talked into auto-include for J2, just because. But I'm trying to. I think I'm going to try to keep J2 true auto-include. I think there are definitely times where you just cut this model just because you don't really care too much about the 2 ping damage while it's buried, and you'd rather have either more healing or more damage in the crew. That being said, for J1, it becomes even more niche. So I think that while the attack is decent and having obey is nice, most of the time you'd rather just have a lawyer, and you're truly going to take it for the counter tech matchups where maybe pinging 1 on summons is actually truly important, or having legitimately a built-in 6 obey is really nice. So against some specific crews, obeys just slap, and this is a good model to hire because it's a henchman obey, and you can stone to get around concealing and stuff like that. That's pretty much it, though. It's a very convenient model, but I still don't bring it into auto-include just because guild tech pieces are bonkers good.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yep.
Okay, so this card is my Blood Moon, and I will explain what I mean by that. Blood Moon is a card in Magic that I jam into as many lists as I possibly can, regardless of whether or not it's actually good, because I actually just love playing the card. This is my second favorite model in all of Malifaux, the only model I enjoy moving around the table more than this is Seamus 1. So I just, there's so much stuff this model can do. It's like the crazy ultimate utility piece to me. It is obviously just much better in Lady J2 because it synergizes with her core game plan. But even when I found excuses to put it into Lady J1 lists when I probably should have had like, you know, a Guild Mage and a Soulstone instead of this model, it has consistently overperformed for me. And it's one of those models that reflects the statement that Sam made earlier, where you hear people talk about it and they'll be like, oh, it's like kind of medium or okay. And then I got my hands on it, and I've had so many times where, you know, the Obey has won me the game, or in Ancient Words with a Tome trigger has won me the game against an opponent with an empty hand, and then I just displace with a Glimpse trigger or something. Sharp Wit with Draw Out Secrets, it's freaking great. So, you know, that's kind of how I feel. I know that this is in my brain, my weird brain space. It's probably not as good as I actually think it is, but I genuinely love playing with this model, and it's a lot of fun, and it has a lot of wide range utility. The other last component that I think is really important to call out, and this might just be a me style play thing, is when I play Lady J1 and Lady J2 lists, I don't really have trouble killing my opponent's models often. I have problems scoring points. And so the Obeys on the early turns with the jury can help me get those extra movement positions out of my models that might not be supported by like a Spicy Mustache ride by a Pale Rider or something like that. So that way I can get my killy models much farther up the board. And then at that point, the jury is kind of activating in the back, but that's okay because I can still get a bunch of utility out of maybe a single move action in an Ancient Words or some crap like that. And that's what I got. Go ahead, Pope, rip me apart.
I thought I was going to have to be the one who is horny for the jury, but you beat me to it, Doug. This has always been like my favorite tech piece in Guild. Just because, as you might have mentioned, there's just a lot of random crap thrown on this card. Like, I had a game a long time ago where I was just playing the jury with like a leadline coat in the middle of a Marcus crew, and he kept trying to leap with his Cerberus, but you lose all of your suits when you cheat for that. So his like 7s that he's like, oh, I need a 7, but it's suited, and he cheats, and I'm like, that doesn't leap. And so like it's just random stuff on the card that's just really good. And there's a lot of different matchups you can find that are really good for it. But I think Haku's original point stands, where it's very much a when it's good in that matchup is when you bring it type model. And there's a lot of different excuses you can find to make it good in that matchup. But I don't think I'm hiring it if I can't find one of those reasons. Like, Stat 6 Obey is usually really good, and that's like the bread and butter of why I'm taking it to begin with. And usually if you can get that plus like 1 or 2 other reasons you want the model, it's really good. So I definitely like where we have it in both 1 and 2 as far as the lists go. I don't really know that there's anything else I want to say too much about it, other than that I don't know that I've ever really gotten value out of False Accusation, but sometimes you'll take the bonus, I guess. I don't know. Very often I just don't bother flipping that card. So yeah, it's a model that's one of my favorite models in Guild to hire, but it's good sometimes.
Yeah, you guys have kind of covered the field there. I like the jury. I think she's cool. I think that pieces like this that are these like weird tech pieces with like specific utility, I like them more in Guild than elsewhere, because leadline coat means that it's harder for your opponent to just sort of pick up your tech piece, and they also can't push it or displace it so that it's not affecting the game. Like, it means that when you need your counter tech to be there and to be doing its thing, you generally will get it. I think she's cool.
Plus she's a stone user in addition to the coat, right? So like in other factions where maybe like an 8 stone user like this, you have to spend a ton more resources. I've found you put a coat on her and you actually maybe only need to spend 1 to 2 stones, where in other factions with kind of a relatively squishy tech piece like this, it's more of a 4 or 5 stone investment to keep them alive, you know?
Yeah.
Without even the laugh off stuff.
And I also think that, like, obviously she's got that cool berry synergy with Lady Justice 2, but like Lady Justice 1 tends to be the one hiring a crew with like beefy dudes you want to obey, and so she's got that obey, so I think that she has a value in both Justices. So yeah, she's cool. No arguments with how you've placed her.
I honestly get more value out of the friendly obey in 2 than I do in 1, and I'll tell you why. Because usually in 2, you always have someone in position to do a thing that's, within reach of her obey, whereas in 1, you might not have that because they'll be concealing, or they'll be overextended, or some other nonsense. But with 2, you're usually playing a bit more of a tight, compact crew where it's like, all right, I kidnapped someone with, J2, and now I can obey both of my Death Marshals to shoot that thing, or I can obey my Domador to heal my guy that, took some damage or something. So like there's a lot more like random utility actions and choices you have in 2 from just like the crews I usually hire in 2 than you do in 1. Whereas in 1, she's really just like obey the Lone Marshal to run and gun and shoot something again, or obey the Lone Marshal to focus so he can focus shoot something next turn. That's just something I wanted to go over with the play pattern of obey.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I'm totally with that. Much more aggressively obey in J1 than I ever defensively obey. All right, on to the judge, the model I get to be horny about. Although, I actually truly like the original sculpt. Poor, rest in peace, my boy. That being said, he's not that good. He's definitely good, but it's not that good. It's man, really wish they print more bonus actions that move people. I'm going to be generous enough to put him in pool-specific matchups. I'm even going to put this behind the Death Marshal in J2. In both of them, you know what? I'll put in Never Player in J2. No, I won't. Just because it actually does truly benefit off the undead a decent amount. Where in like Wedge, where this person can already get into position, or you have a bit more movement, especially because of the recruiters. Good lord, its attacks are actually just really good. Getting you soul stones is really nice. Turning the bonus action does truly a lot of work for not too much investment, and especially in J2 where the enemy's almost always undead. That being said, though, yeah, it's not a good model. I probably don't hire it. I don't know why I'm putting it this high. Mainly because I've watched a few good guild players use it against me / use it in ways that weren't terrible. But every time I hire it, it truly just lags behind crews. It just ends up in bad terrain. And it just is really slow. Can't really do much. Range 1. None of the tech really matters. I'm done. Never mind. Go take it away. I want to love this model, I truly do, but it's gotten so power crept that I'd rather just have support models and invest in the already truly good beaters that Guild has.
Is that the word of the hockey?
Yeah, maybe if you need something for a coat to go on, I don't know. Yeah, take it away.
Are you saying that somewhere in the middle of that evaluation you had a terrible revelation?
Wah 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 wah.
Everybody here just actively witnessed an intense emotional roller coaster of hockey.
My defense there crumbled away. Go, yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll do that. Sorry. Boom. There we go. I got you on that one, Haku. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and the way that I thought about this model, because I thought about this a lot before the video, is just quite frankly, this model is not good enough for a 10 stone beater.
Yeah.
It should cost like 8, I think.
Just hire a peacekeeper.
Yeah, if you're gonna spend 10 soul stones in the Marshal keyword, you have about 1 million other better things to do with it, because it is another slow model that needs to be supported. I would way rather spend those points on either the Lone Marshal or the Pale Rider, which are fast independently and enable the crew, or like my Blood Moon girl, like the best girl of all time, other than Talk, the jury, right? So, like in my mind, this is hard trash tier, like Molly 2 levels of bad, basically. Go ahead, Pope.
Yeah, I was really concerned when you were about to try and tell me that I would ever hire this model in Justice 1. I can see hiring it in Justice 2 sometimes, but in Justice 1, this model is strictly competing for that Ride With Me slot that Justice 1 wants from the Pale Rider every game, turn 1. You can't ride with me both models, unfortunately. So.
Well, you can leap in with Wedge, and then you can ride with me her and Wedge, and then you can get both beaters in. Turn
But
1.
if you ride with me, leap and wedge, you get the extra attack from the leap trigger in wedge, and that's why you would still probably do it with Justice 1 instead of the Judge, because then you also get, you know, your plus flips on all your Greatswords because you didn't have to charge, etc. Anyways, I think I do see there being an excuse if I played enough games of J2 to figure out when I would play this model, but I haven't found it yet. Like Crumble Away, I think is actually pretty good action.
They're really good.
Like there's a lot of value in that one action. The only bad thing I can say about it is it has a TN, right? And so if I could find a matchup where I wanted Crumble Away, or a matchup where like I was going to be eating a lot of Irreducible, but there was going to be stuff that I could kill to heal for like Unnatural Vigor, like maybe Karai 2, I don't know. That's a place where I would consider it, maybe. Just because Quick Reflexes and Unnatural Vigor have some weird synergy when there's just a lot of crap on the board. But yeah, it's definitely not the first model I'm ever reaching for, which is a shame because I think the sculpt's really cool.
Yeah, the Judge deserves better than that. Much, much better than that. I should know what I'm talking about. I myself commissioned a genuine Judge in Malifaux for 10 stones, and I've been practicing for almost 2 years now, and I can even cut slabs of solid steel with my enchanted katana. Why does this model have
Thank you, Sam.
Why does this model have a higher max damage than her boss? Feels disrespectful.
You're supposed to be one of my best friends. Why have you never?
Well,
shown
because
me
she's
your
trained
enchanted
for
katana?
1,000
What the fuck?
years.
That's
Yeah.
I just want to point out before we move on too far into the memery, just don't take the risk of reason. That action will always flip tomes. Maybe if this model had intuition, you would ever take that action.
so
But
bad.
like, the action is appropriately labeled the risk of reason, right? You're going to tell yourself only 1 in every 4 cards is a tome. So, you know, there's only a 1 in 4 chance I get fucked. So more often than not, I won't get fucked, and then you'll get fucked. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I don't
Crumble
know.
Away is so much more reasonably consistent and like gets better value.
10 stones for a model that has to take walk actions to get over to you and then attack you with its sword to like do stuff is not an amount of stones that I'm interested in paying. This model costs too much for what it does. And I mean, yeah, Crumble Away is cool. It's like I'm not going to pay 10 stones to get to shoot 1 Crumble Away per turn.
Maybe
Yeah.
you should 2 Crumbles Away per turn. Lone Marshal.
I mean, literally, we didn't put him on the list, but legitimately, 10 Soul Stone's a Peacekeeper, Brutal Emissary. They're like range 2 beaters that have just as much, if not more, movement tricks than her, that have better stats or defensive tech than her. It's kind of sad.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. It was the same in M2E. Really cool model, really cool sculpt, just not really hireable.
Blades and bullets. Bullets
The
and
app
blades.
doesn't have the old Judge sculpt on it. That's kind
Yeah,
of
it does. You have to, in order to see alt sculpts, you have to make.
You have to
crew,
click
I
on the
think.
name. There's a drop down and it'll let you see.
I mean,
all
I see the
things.
drop alternate things. I get Puppet the Judge and I get Judge Rotten Harvest. I don't get the old Judge.
Wait, what?
Anyways,
no,
I
I
think
actually have to take the time. And
no,
figure that
we
out.
have spent enough time thinking about this model. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Gatling Gunners. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh my god, you truly don't. Holy shit. The old sculpt is so cool, guys. Alright,
Fuck, Gatling Gunners.
on to versatile models. And Landon's gonna get really annoyed at me for this, but Gatling
am.
Gunners. Oh boy, do I love Gatling Gunners in J1. I'll do the easy thing that he'll agree with and put him in never higher in J2. I don't really think this model serves too much of a purpose in J2. You're never using 33 to get the cards for it. That's one of the reasons on why you can take him in J1. Is you can get the cards for him to give all your models stealth. But the main reason is actually a point Landon brought up earlier on why he partially likes the Lone Rider. And it's the reason why I actually really like the Gatling Gunner. Besides the fact that it draws me a card, which I value obscenely high, and for a 6 Soulstone model, it's pretty good. It's a lot of good ways, 1, to flip cards for your lawyers, but also 2, just to do long distance ping damage to start soaking up the crew for your models to go in and pick off specific models. And it's really great to use on models that they don't exactly necessarily think they care too much about. So maybe not like the quintessential beaters are putting in the middle, but like a couple tech pieces where it's really just like, oh, they have 4 wounds and you really just need to do that 1 damage to be able to go in there and one-shot them, or 5 wounds and you just need to do 2. There's a lot of models like that where you can reach with range 12 and stat 4 plus flips to just actually ping them off. And then in mid-game, they're very good at actually attacking models that you're engaged with, and then if you fail, you can get your scheme markers down or focus on your models, and if you pass, then they're just willing to try to YOLO take 2, 4, 6 damage, which they normally can't afford against a really good beater crew. So they have this nice weird synergy there that I actually really love. The stealth early, I value decently in this specific GG, where we have a couple of schemes and strats where you're specifically defending points. So it's really easy to set up these guys, set up your tech supports in one specific point, and truly actually build a nice little bubble where charging in hurts them. You have maybe even have jury, so they're losing suits if they ever want to come in. And you're able to do all these things. And one of the things you desperately need in a fully aggressive crew is card draw. So every extra card draw actually is massive, especially when you want to use things like shrug off lawyers to draw cards, or any other number of reasons you're cheating. Ride with me, TNs, obey TNs. I truly think they actually have a decent spot in J1 because of all those reasons, and I will defend them to the death because of that. J2, just hire in keyword. Your keyword's cracked. your low soul stone models kind of cracked. You don't need this, and you really don't need the TNs nearly as much as you want in J1.
Is that the word of Haku?
Yeah, that's my full-throated defensive gunners.
Damn. I mean, you know, what we always said in law school was if somebody comes out of the gate proactively defending something so hard, there must be a reason why. And I believe that the reason is that this model sucks.
Doug, you never went to law school.
I went to a year of law school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
As
cool.
someone who actually graduated from law school, I'm right.
I'm right. Screw you, Haku. All right. So
I also graduated from law school, and I'm not sold.
yeah. I mean, I'm good at arguing. I'm definitely a good
Oh,
arguer.
no, that's true. That's true.
So.
I'm just saying I'm not sold on Gatling Gunners.
Let's fucking play right now. I will
Is
take
this
a
your
J1
version of
whiz with
taking off
gunners
your glove and
just
throwing it to the
kill
table?
people. Yeah.
Damn.
You know how good general actions are with focus and or ski markers on a crew that just wants to beat the shit out of you?
Yeah, I know.
As well
I
as
know.
just an additional card?
Listen,
Holy shit.
hold on. Okay, so here's my reasoning, right? Like in Lady J1, I like to alpha strike people, just like you do. I like movement, I like buffing, I like healing. So I'm spending my versatile points on Stewie and like guild mages and like lawyers, you know? It's usually like some combination, 2 of those models out of those 3. I'm damn sure not using those point slots for a gunner, but it might also be because in all of my Lady J1 lists, I often hire both Lone Marshal and Pale Rider, so I'm pretty short on points. So that might be why I just like never end up hiring this guy, because I never have anywhere near enough soul stones left to like this guy's 6, right? He's 6. Yeah, I just never have that. I'd rather just go into the game with an extra lead line cloak and 4 soul stones to pump up Lady J when she Goku style throws herself into the opponent's face. So it's kind of my take on it. I will admit on this one, I don't have a ton of reps with this model. It's like the one model on this list I really haven't played very many games with. But that might be partially my fault as a player and partially my play style. But take it away, the Pope.
I'm not sold, but I'm not unsold either. Like if you had just told me you like it for dig the trenches, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, we're done. But I don't know. You have some reasonable points about what it does. I don't think it's anything I'm really going to ever be reaching for in my suite of models I'm hiring after Pale Rider and Lone Marshal, because I'm with Doug on I'm hiring Pale Rider and Lone Marshal in every one of my J1 lists. But I don't know. Maybe I'll try it out one day if I ever play J1 instead of J2 in some bizarro universe.
They nerfed J2.
The balance foe format.
Yeah, exactly. The Bizarro universe.
Actually, Balance Foe, I think she'd be really good.
Again, Bizarroverse. But
You're literally in a Balance Foe tournament right now.
No, I'm top 16. Get the fuck out of here.
No, land it.
great.
Land
yeah.
it. Jeez. How you doing in top
Gentlemen,
16, Longton?
Gentlemen,
Fight
let's
me.
be civil.
I
Let's
lost
be
with
civil.
Lady J. What do you want from me?
Damn, the saltiness is
I'm ready
unreal.
for that to not get edited out because it's
No, we're
important
not
that we
editing
know
that out.
He is
We
lost
can't
with
edit
Lady
out
J
Salty
too.
Haku yelling
Oh.
and Sam yelling at each other.
I
It's hilarious.
inted so fucking hard. Oh, it's
Okay. All right. If anybody wants to see what Haku's talking about, I'm sure he's recorded his game. Go
Yeah,
and
we
check
can
out his
just put a
channel.
link to that recording on this video.
Wait, actually, no. Let's turn this dysfunction into a plug. So everybody should go check out Haku's channel. He has a bunch of his streamed games there. Sometimes he flames out in giant defeat, and sometimes he's victorious.
Yeah,
Funnily
so-
enough, that
uh-oh.
game won't be on my channel. But yeah. All right. take it
Gatling
away.
Gunners. Yeah, I think this is a firm you should try it before you decide that you hate it. I haven't tried it yet, so I can't decide that I hate it. I'm skeptical, but I'm not unwilling to. What do you think, Sam?
I've never seen it tried, but everything that Haku says makes perfect sense to me. It sounds like totally correct. Like I'm nodding along as he was talking. Like those are all things I've seen Gatling Gunners do in different lists. They are good at the stuff that they do. I don't think anybody who hires a Gatling Gunner is ever going to be super sad about it because they have a lot of cool text on their cards. So I would say, yeah, in the absence of like information to the contrary, I'm totally willing to buy it.
All right, my last defense, just because you guys brought up the point, which I'll just hammer out right now. Pale Rider, Steward, Lone Marshal, Lawyer. You throw in a Gatling Gunner, you still have 11 Soul Stones left over, and I think even with all the key models, you perfectly build your alpha list. You still have space for this guy. But we'll talk about that more at the end. So I'm just going to move right on to the model that is absolutely necessary in Lady J1, which is Guild Lawyers. You can never change my mind on this one. Guild Lawyer is a nutty model in J1. You need high cards, you need severes, you want obeys, everything it does amazingly. Shield, draw cards. This model's cracked. You need it in every list. That being said, I'm seeing enough of Landon's lists in Lady J2. I've seen enough Lady J2 to understand that it's not absolutely needed. I still think it's very valuable in Lady J2 for the same specific reasons. You just don't have as much incentive to need the 13. Some lists you do, where you truly know that you're going to go forward with Lady J, bury one key model, and then beat the shit out of it, and you need the 13 to do that, kind of like Tara 2. You just absolutely need that high card in order to win your bury duel. But enough of the time, you just have enough of a crew with enough actions where those specific models can actually you can just fail their actions. Lady J1, I don't feel like has as much of that leeway. If you're going in alphaing, you need the high cards, you need to hit.
Is that the word of the Haku?
That's the word of the Haku.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are amazingly awesome. The question in my mind is often not, should I hire a guild lawyer? The question is often, can I hire 2 guild lawyers? And as a sidebar, which is hilarious, I named my 2 guild lawyers Haku and Sam, and I wrote it on the bottom of their bases because
Nice.
you're my 2 favorite lawyers. So you're my 2 favorite Malifaux lawyers. So it's actually really funny. And that's what I name them as, like, when objectives and stuff come up. To be fair, Sam, you're often the hidden martyr and you often die. Sorry, buddy.
Well, that's also
Who's the
true.
third lawyer, though?
I do often die IRL. So
yeah. Anyway, these things are so good. I love tools for the job. I will look for excuses not to play tools for the job models. And this is, in my mind, one of the best utility tools for the job models that folks can hire in the 5 to 7 soulstone range. So I love this thing. I probably take it more than I should in Lady J2 lists. I auto include it in Lady J1 lists and sometimes find myself with 2 of them in Lady J1 lists. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, so the question is not if I'm hiring a lawyer in Lady J1, it's which sculpt do I want? Because the guy with the contract, he's really cool with like
That's Sam.
having the book
For me,
out
that's
there.
Sam.
But like, I don't know, he doesn't project power in the same way that Pigface does or that Girl Boss does.
Haku is girl boss, and Sam is contract guy.
Cool.
Gotcha. Well, I'm pretty partial to Big Face, if only because he's got like that weird thing going on with his hand, and he's also the first sculpt that pops up in the app. But even if I was playing with physical lawyers, I think that's my first lawyer, and then girl boss is probably my second. Sorry, Sam.
That's okay. I know.
But real talk. Yeah, these things are pretty good for J1. I haven't yet hired one with J2, but I think Haku's absolutely right, where if you hit that matchup where you know, like, this matchup depends entirely on whether or not I bury his dude turn 1, like, you'll probably want one. So yeah, I think we're going to talk a lot about Guild Lawyer if we ever talk about, more than one Guild Master, so I'm content to leave it there for today.
Yeah, Guild Lawyer is the best 7-stone versatile in the Guild faction. Like, I heard a rumor that there's a master out there who can hire him for 6 stones. I don't know. I've never seen any proof. I don't believe it, but I guess I'll believe it when I see it. But yeah, everyone hires them. Cost 7 stones. They're really good. They give you 13s. They draw you cards. They make your models slightly tougher with shielded. There's not much
Top
to say.
16 match, Hoffman versus Lucian, coming tomorrow or Saturday.
I want to play a game where the opponent just lets me hire 7 Guild Lawyers. And
I think you'll lose that game, but you'll have fun.
Probably. It'll be amazing, though. Can you imagine looping the Red Joker that many times for nonsense reasons?
If you're allowed to.
Look, the way you play that list, Doug, and you're going to hate it, is you play...
How do you instantly have advice on my fictitious Guild Lawyer only list?
You play Grimwell as your leader, and you get to hire all the nurses and all the lawyers. You get 5
awesome.
tools for the job.
That's so good. And the
Yeah,
nurses are
and
Healy, too.
you call it professional school.
I called it malpractice suit, but, whatever you want.
Oh, that's a good one, too.
No,
That's
you
true.
know what you call it? The aristocrats.
Or just slap suit.
I don't think I get that one, but okay. Moving on.
Yeah, I'll
It's a
explain
good,
it to you.
I got that one, Doug. It was good. In fact, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to tell the aristocrats on stream right now.
Yeah, thank you. Good.
No, I'm not going to actually do that.
Definitely don't do that. This video will immediately be demonetized.
That goes on the Patreon.
Yeah, that's our After Dark Patreon. If you want to see nonsense that we do that's kind of raunchy, Sam has terabytes of it of himself. All right, so Guild Mages. Haku, take us away.
Yeah,
buddy.
Guild Mages. They're a very interesting model, brought in. A lot of people thought were kind of OP. Honestly, they're probably just kind of all right. They're decent tech pieces that allow healing. In certain crews, they allow a lot of healing. I think in Lady J1, there's a decent argument, especially because it buffs Juggernaut. Marker removal is decently important in some matchups, and you don't really have much access to that besides Guild Mage. Also, long range, putting down scheme markers is pretty nice. All in all, though, being said, you're mostly using this just to get healing in from discarding cards. And when that's not good, they're pretty bad. So if you don't have a crew that's kind of built around that, then they're not great. And the reason why I don't rate them higher in J1, who discards enough cards, kind of, is just because lawyers are normally the main source. And since they're in the back line, they're not the ones being hit. And J1's Juggernaut is probably not enough of a reason to bring a slow Guild Mage forward. So mostly you're going to bring them in J1 when you need marker removal, and you're kind of just fine with them trailing behind a little bit. Or maybe it's like Wedge, and you can actually have them reasonably forward. They do kind of die decently quick. They are that defense 4 we were talking about, but they, have Counterspell and Arcane Shielding, so they're a little hard to put down. But not too hard. Defense 4 is defense 4. That being said, in J2, I probably don't think I ever hire these models. You're not discarding cards for pretty much anybody. So you're never going to get any healing from the aura, which is, as I've said, the main point of the card.
False,
and
but
without
okay.
Sure, the aggressive scheme marker placement, I think, has just fallen out in GG3. So I really don't rate that. But it is decently nice with the coffins to do some aggressive scheme marker placement while healing your crew with the bonus action. That being said, you have Domadors for healing. So it has to be, I think, pretty... it has to be a pretty weird matchup, I think, for you to have it. But I guess it's technically possible. I don't like it.
Is that the word of the Haku?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I love these guys. They're awesome. I have won a good number of games because of delusion, and people they don't play around it for some reason, and they have just fed me models as a result, because it's a stat 6 non-gun fast action that positions an enemy into schmagling range with one of my many schmagel weapons that we've talked about. So I love that. It's an auto jam when it's obviously a marker heavy matchup for me. I mean, it just is like so good then. But I still often take one of them for either delusion or the ability, especially if the opponent has negative status conditions that they're looking to throw at my boys and my girls. The transmute, being able to flip that into fast for like a really crappy tome on a non-contested flip is gross. If you guys want to see a really, really gross version of what I'm talking about, we have a really old bat rep where Sam was playing Nelly into Anya 1, and he like did this onto Fiona, I think, pretty effectively. It's kind of a showcase of how busted and nuts a guild mage is. It's like,
Yeah, don't try that in VWS. They won't let you transmute to fast, but that's fine.
Really? Why?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think
Because
you
you
actually
transmute
can.
to a condition with a value.
Yeah.
Is the way they
doesn't-
read it.
They read it that way.
So,
I feel
don't
like
try
after
and read it
playing
that
with
way.
after playing with it a bit, I kind of agree with them. That was the very first game I had played with them, and I wasn't certain how they worked. And I think that it's defendable to say that you can transmute into fast, but like giving it more thought, I don't think you can. I don't think you're supposed to be able to. So
It has to be a numbered condition.
Yeah.
Or a
Discuss it with your
numberable.
TO, but it doesn't work in VWS if you're playing on Vassal. So
Oh, I didn't know that. I've always had it played against me that way also. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna play it this way. Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Obviously,
No.
if you are playing in a meta where the ruling is that you can transmute into fast, that changes how good these guys are pretty significantly, and consider accordingly.
Yeah, interesting. But that is like a judge rule, ask your TO thing, right? That's not like there's like space
it's
there.
ambiguous enough. You should ask your TO.
Yeah, WYRD
But
has not ruled on it. Is
Yeah.
the answer to that?
Are we running into another version of with like how the take the hit used to be, and like people played it differently and stuff, and even though it was a very significant
Personally, I
difference in
think
power
this
level?
is significantly less ambiguous than that was. But
Yeah,
I don't think we need to get too deep into rules discussions here.
yeah, that's fair. All right, so yeah, I guess I had been playing it the wrong way, so I'd been playing it that way, which was maybe wrong. But I still like this model. It's really, really good target removal, and when there are active markers out there, it's really good. When there's not, it's obviously worse. Probably hire Stewie and a lawyer instead.
Yeah, I have a real soft spot for the mages. I think they're great. I think the hype on them generally has died down since launch, as people have realized that they have weaknesses. They, can sometimes not, they don't hit the heights that people expected them to, but they are still very good. But that said, I consider these guys very much to be counter tech. You take them if you're not getting something out of the marker removal or condition transmutation, then I wouldn't take them. Like if you were playing into a crew that wants to hand out a condition, like awesome, please give my models too focused. I would love it if you did that. But if you're not playing into a crew that's handing out a condition like burning or distracted or poisoned, and you're not playing into a crew that is dropping markers that absolutely need to be removed, then the other stuff this model does is just a little too incidental.
I really like these guys in scheming pools because rule of law can be a 2-point swing sometimes. So that can be really nice. So that's probably like the worst case scenario that I would play them, is that, I'm playing in scheming pool and I think my opponent's going to go for marker schemes. But they have upside beyond that we've discussed already. So I actually think I would scoot them up in Lady J2 just a little bit, just because I think there's value to being able to create a scheme next to one of your own coffin markers to try and score points sometimes. They're definitely not something that I would reach for a lot, but you also get to get heals off of your discards for shrug off on the the Death Marshals or the recruiters. So it also just gives you it means that every model in that crew, if you hire a guild mage, has the ability to heal any model within 6 of the guild mage in that crew. So that in and of itself provides a different angle of utility that you might not necessarily get out of another model, that you also aren't getting in J1, that I find to be almost more useful for these guys being in J2 lists than they are in J1. Just because you also make your own markers to try and reel of law off of, because you don't have to remove the marker to drop your scheme. That obviously I think had a lot more value in GG2 than it does in GG3 with things like deathbeds existing, but you know, I still think the measure of the model is such that I'll sometimes find an excuse to take one in my JD2 lists as well.
All right, I think I did mine out of order, so I think that is all set for that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably right. I'm probably never hiring them, but it's yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah.
It's defensible.
Yeah. Steward. I just like my gunners too much. That's the true reason. Steward. Steward's a very interesting model. It was a guild stay piece for I think a long while. I think it's kind of also been quote unquote power crept out, but not even really power crept. I think just GG style changes how you play him. His main purpose is he gives focus and heals a model for 6 soul stones, and that's really good. Always has been. Condition removal obviously comes up, but not as much as you would think. And then obviously killing him is always funny because sometimes he just accidentally kills whatever killed him. For all those reasons, in J1, I think you probably get really close to auto-include, just because of getting focus and how good that is. As we talked about, there are a couple other ways of doing it. Obviously with the lawyer and the jury, but he is the cheapest way to do it with a 6, I believe, while getting a 1-2-3 healing flip. In Lady J2, you're probably never hiring this model. I don't think focus is important at all. And the healing, again, it's like, why not just pay the 1 more soul stone for Domadors, who can also focus and heal? As Landon pointed out earlier, to most of the crew. I guess not the undead part of it, though. Overall, it's been a guild mainstay. It's very good. Lady J1, arguably, I think some people would definitely rate it auto-include. I rate it slightly lower just because I don't actually value focus too much in Lady J1 because I don't know how much I actually care about cheating damage. And therefore, I prioritize lawyers over them for guaranteeing hits.
Yeah, so you'd rather, in your mind, you'd rather have the 12 or the 13 to land the hit or to cheat in as the severe than to spam the focus, is what you're basically saying?
Yeah,
Plus
for me
the
in
shielded.
Lady J1, I value, and the chance to just draw a card. So Lady J1, Guild Lawyer, to me is a card that guarantees a hit, while also potentially drawing you cards / giving focus or repositioning. Guild Steward is 1 soulstone cheaper, who basically just quote-unquote guarantees focus on a TN flip that I've Black Jokered, I've hated this model, or you just don't want to cheat a card because you're just going resource negative at that point, and focus becomes really intensive when you don't have a lot of ways of drawing cards. And that's a problem I think a lot of guilds suffers from, and why I don't actually value Steward that much. If you're having to cheat to hit, then cheat for your focus damage, and now you got your 1 attack off and no others.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, is that the word of the Haku?
Yeah, that's the word of the Haku.
So I tend to agree with you, in that, like, it feels like at the beginning of M3, this was like a mainstay in Lady J1 lists, right? It was almost like you probably are taking this most of the time. In my opinion, if there's just some better other corner case edge options, and I think on net it loses out to a lawyer, so probably has lost a little bit of ground, I guess. He's still fun. I still think he's good. He's still definitely usable. He gets extra good when Dispel Magic becomes relevant. So I guess I would lean towards matchups where I know that the opponent is going to be stacking large amounts of negative conditions on me, but even then you could still just use the Guild Lawyer to turn it, or the Guild Mage to turn it into focus instead, even if you can't flip it to fast. So I'm like kind of conflicted there too. I don't know. I feel kind of weird about this model, and I guess I don't really have a... I know it's good, and it probably hangs in the B+ range for me of support models. I guess that's kind of where I land on it, I guess.
It's somewhere in that weird mish of like there's 3 or 4 different models you can hire for this role, and no one's really gonna flame you if you take a steward over like a Domador or a lawyer, but it's not always the best choice. I think what you said is pretty much right, is that if there's gonna be big fat condition stacks I want to get rid of, then like maybe that's what gets him the edge over one of the other pieces. For me, he hits like a weird niche in between Guild Lawyer and Domador, where it's like I want to do some healing with my support model, but I don't want to do Domador levels of healing with my support model, but I also want like, you know, some focus or cards or whatever, but like the lawyer does that way better. So I don't know. I personally prefer the Domador over the Steward, and I usually take the lawyer over the Domador, but I still like Domador sometimes. So he's just kind of like the worst of the bunch in my opinion, but like he's not bad.
Holy crap, Lois, Stewie's good. Like, yeah, I think he's fine. Like, I think that focus, like AP transfer is a big deal when you're handing out focus, and like there's a limited number of models in the game that do it consistently and efficiently, and a lot of them are very, you know, high picks. And one of these crews really cares about AP transfer, and the other crew doesn't, and that's how you have them rated. And I don't feel bad about it at all. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, my true hot take is, for me, literally, I think a never hire. I dispel magic has to be actually super important. But yeah, onwards towards the true MVP of Guild, Pale Rider, auto include, Lady J1. Holy crap, this model's so good with her. Go in, conditions, reducible, burning, healing to your model who's perma engaged with the crew. Delicious, love it. Ride with me. Delicious, love it. There's literally never a time where I think I don't hire Pale Rider in Lady J1.
You hire Pale Rider before you hire your master here.
True. Like, legitimately, true. Pale Rider and Lady J1 are just 2 peas in a pod. Now, Pale Rider and Lady J2 definitely goes down in value a decent amount, but not by terribly too much. I'd actually probably take it more often than I take the lawyer in Lady J2. For all the same reasons, it's really good. Still hands out the healing, still does the damage and burning, but normally you're going to want that pulse irreducible to be truly relevant in Lady J2 to take it over some of the other keyword synergies. It gets cock-blocked by coffin markers in Lady J2, so it's kind of just awkward there, because, you know, 50 mil base, it's annoying if you can't ignore the markers. And gives everything cover. What? Yeah, you do at least see over it, which is pretty nice. Still shadows exist, but yeah. All in all, it gets denied a little bit by, I think, coffin marker / the synergy not mattering as much, because you don't really have a true ride with me target you truly need. But goddamn, is it still really good on Lady J1 to just ride with me her. All in all, yeah, I'd still hire this model. You know what? I'd actually hire this model. No, maybe a little bit less than the jury, actually. In J1, just because points-wise, you don't have too many points in the list left over in J2. So, I'd leave it there. That's my word.
The word of the Haku.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he gives spicy mustache strides all day in Lady J1. He's like the BFF of that list. I agree 100% there. Not as much to talk about. I would actually kind of rank him a little lower in Lady J2, farther back on the track that he's on now, simply because he's a lot of points and he doesn't feed into a heavy synergy based crew. He's good and he's just like a good model, but he's a really expensive model in a crew that really cares about synergy with the thing that they're doing. So I feel like for me, I don't usually want to spend those 11 points in Lady J2 lists. So basically my take is he's an all-star in 1 and he's a pretty expensive generalist in 2.
Yeah,
so like,
I mean,
here's my take on where this is happening, right? Like sometimes you're going to play Lady J2 and you get your Lady J2 list, you know, kind of like all rolled out, or maybe you don't really like think you want to play Lady J1. You're pretty sure you want to hit Lady J2, but like Death Marshals aren't good or Domadors aren't good for some reason. And you're like, well, I still want to play Lady J2 because I still want to bury his shit. But, you know, all my minions are going to die, so I'm going to take the Pale Rider instead, and I'm just going to build like a value town list where, you know, maybe I do drop the coffin turn 1 or whatever. And so like ride with being Lady J2 up the board, taking a shot, then just walking back, and then having Lady J2 just like bury something, charge, and then walk back to your deployment zone, and playing like a super passive castly game. Like you can totally do that, and Pale Rider helps set that up better than like the keyword synergy list would. So like when you decide that your keyword's not good in the matchup, that's when you're really going to be leaning back on this Pale Rider, and I think he is appropriately rated in that, just because of how solid, at least I think, the core for Lady J2 is for me. Is that, you know, the second you stop playing core Lady J2 with like a little bit of flex, you're like busting out the Pale Rider and going to a completely different list, and he's the first model you hire in that list.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing like Guild, and I rather than trying to lean heavy on keyword synergy, I just want to take a list of like generically strong models. It's like Lawyer 1, Pale Rider 2. Like the Pale Rider does a lot. If you're playing a list that is all about getting good cards and then feeding those good cards to good models to use them, the Pale Rider is kind of at the top of the list of those good models. So I think that I don't think that I would ever, in almost any master in Guild, put him in never hire, although in many of them it would be very situational. But Lady J1 is, I think, his absolute best buddy, and it shows. And Lady J2, I think it's as you say, it's acceptable. Like ride with me on Lady J is actually like good. Lady J2 is like actually good. Just lets you get, as you said, that key like turn 1 bury, run away.
Yeah, and so like a random example I can think of off the top of my head, like if I run into Jackdaw, right, and I'm playing Lady Justice, I don't necessarily want to play Justice 1, but I don't want to play the Lady Justice 2 list that I'm normally playing, right? And like you're already hiring in a bunch of Ruthless Beaters when you start going down the Pale Rider Lone Marshal route, and like, yeah, you're not really hiring the DMRs into that. And so that's a lot of points freed up that you just want to spend on Value Town.
Yeah.
All right. Any gentlemen? So basically what we're going to do next, guys, is we're going to do a high-level breakdown of Lady Justice 1, just like generally how you want to do the playstyle for her. And then we're going to talk about a very high-level example list. And then we're going to do the same thing for Lady Justice 2. So like Haku said, we changed up the formula a little bit for everybody based on feedback that we've been receiving. And so we think that this is a little bit more of a consumable way to kind of take actionable gameplay lists and like put them on the table based on the advice and based on what we talk about in these tier lists.
Works for me.
All right, take it away, Mr. Haku.
All right, Lady J1, just to expand a bit on her. I think Lady J1 is a deceptively underplayed model in current GG3, mainly because she's been so meh for GG1 and 2 because of how scheme and strat oriented both of those were, where we really saw her shine for a while in GG0 when it was so kill heavy. We're back to that kill heavy format, if not even more so than GG0, especially because all the strats, a couple of the key strats like funneling you towards certain objectives where leap just becomes so much more valuable, or just randomly picking off a model in their backline becomes super valuable. And you have your 3 quasi 4 AP master or 5 AP master, because leap sudden strike, being able to run around the map, kill important models with min 5 damage potential. And it's kind of just insane. Stunning Strike is also just so ridiculously strong right now because there's so many masters and models that are just absolutely dependent on triggers that we're seeing how amazing Yan Lo 2 is with it, and people just forget that it's on Lady J1. And at the moment, I think Lady J1 is just being outshined by Lady J2. They have different play styles for sure, but Lady J2 has just kind of been renowned as just bonkers strong right now. You do have to play it correctly, but it's just being outshined by, like, why not just play 2 at this point? That being said, 1, if that fits your play style more, which for me it definitely does, is very, very good at the moment. A lot of it's going to focus around early game alpha strikes. So you're talking about focusing up Lady J, focusing up Pale Rider, riding with me after, waiting a little bit, and then truly going in and killing things. The only true thing you're truly worried about, how many times I say true, is the fact that pass token generation is becoming more and more common. And as that becomes more and more common, alpha strikes are getting, without pass tokens, are getting just arguably power creep / worse. If you can't survive going in and then 2 activations from your opponent, it's really bad. The plus side is you have a lawyer, so vast majority of the time you're able to cheat fate. So even if they have a pass token, they're likely only getting last activation, and then it's just like you didn't have a lawyer, and that's probably fine. That being said, to talk about specific lists right now, my go-to models legitimately are Pale Rider, Lone Marshal, Lawyer, no surprise, and then it's going to be Gatling Gunner. I can't talk this up enough. I love throwing it in. That's leaving me with 17 Soul Stones left over to really curtail it to however you want. Normally, that's probably another Lawyer, as well as Leadline Cloaks, obviously, on Lady J and Pale Rider or sorry, you can't. Yeah, what am I talking about? You can definitely Leadline Coat Pale Rider. It's living. It got added on. Living on a non-construct. Just blur that out. I just had a brain fart for a moment. So yeah, Leadline Coat, Lady J,
Editor's
Pale
voice,
Rider.
It will not be blurred out.
And then Lone Marshal. I think sometimes you can drop Lone Marshal, but most of the time it's almost always worth keeping in. If you're on Wedge, though, it's definitely worth thinking about Peacekeeper, and it's worth thinking about sometimes Brutal Emissary, but probably not anymore, actually. Got a little bit of power crept out of there, but the extra healing is a little nice. Overall, I'm very satisfied where I think Lady J1 is now. Play her more, guys. She's very, very strong. 33 allows you to, on the boards that are truly screwed, get around secret covert ops. Very nice to just, pop behind a wall, stand next to terrain, or just, score late game, score points. And then just be super annoying by placing models in different locations. Also, as we talked about, the extra movement from Pale Rider placing models is not a joke. It's 2 inches in a base. That's huge. So, yeah, that's I think that's the high level of Lady J1.
All right, Pope, you ready to bring us home with the spiciest Lady J2 take ever?
I don't know. Maybe it'll be spicy, maybe it won't be. But the way I usually play Lady J2 is I'm going to grab her, 2 of the Death Marshal recruiters with Leadline Coats usually. Sometimes she'll take other upgrades or no upgrades, but usually Leadline Coats for me. Then 2 Domadors and 33. The second Domador is usually the first thing you'll sub out if you want something like a Jury or a Guild Mage or some other tech pick, because you already got 1. But like 2 is still pretty good. They're very efficient models for their job, which is just making sure that you never lose a model in this list. So what you're going to do is you're going to take Lady J, you're going to try and see what model your opponent has graciously offered you by walking twice and then taking the Ashwood Coffin action to just bury it. The line of sight isn't a question because you just don't care. So if they're anywhere within 18 inches of your deployment zone, they're buried, and you do whatever you want to them for the rest of the turn. Use your last AP to charge backwards to keep Lady Justice herself out of danger. If you can get away with doing it with the 1 walk because you either rode with me up with a Pale Rider or had some sort of weird push, or they just really overextended that model, great, beautiful. But usually you're going to have to spend 2 walks. This gets a little awkward when they've got take the hit. So you probably don't do this exact game plan if you're expecting that. But if you really need to capture that thing and they do have take the hit, you can always use the trigger on your shockwave to try and cheese out a second bury. There's no limit on how many things you can have buried because they only pop out if they pop out. So don't feel bad about that. So after you've got them captured, you've got these 2 lovely Death Marshal recruiters ready to introduce them to bullets from the void. And 33 sometimes will be ready to shoot them too. But your actions before Lady Justice kidnaps something usually just going to be Domadors, pass tokens, and 33 kind of dirtling. And then hopefully eventually towards the end of the turn he's giving you something to just kidnap and kill. And that's kind of what you're going to do. Otherwise you'll position somewhat defensively, try and score like your 2 points of the strategy on like turns 3, 4, 5. You don't really necessarily need to score turn 2 if you can't get away with the positioning for it. Some crews might just like be way too scary to go into right away. Like I played I played a game versus Hoffman 2 where it's just like I didn't want to advance quite that quickly up the board, so I just let him have run of the board for the first 2 turns before I captured Hoffman himself and killed him. And after that, I played for my points. So don't be afraid to play defensively with her. You've got the ability to drop line of sight blockers with your coffins. If you're playing all in keyword, they don't even inhibit your movement up the board, so you can try and use that to, get yourself some cover and play a bit more cagey. And you might say, oh, but I'm taking so much damage doing that just on the way up. That's what Dominators are for. That's what the Justice Shockwave is for. Because once you're stuck in for like those middle turns, perfectly viable turn for Lady Justice 2. Just AoE heal your crew for 2 for each Shockwave you need to drop. And you just keep everybody alive so that when you're getting to those later turns, your opponent's down 3, 4, 5 models, and you've still got all 7. Or 8, or however many it was, because your totem totally counts. The answer is still 7 even with the totem. Okay, cool. Not that you couldn't hire like a Death Marshal instead of Coates sometimes for that extra 8th model, but that's the basic game plan and a couple of the like, well, what ifs.
Mr. Samuel L. Barrows Fishman, are you ready to bring us home with the general spicy takeaways, and I think, more than anyone, your opinion on how to play against Lady Justice, both 1 and 2 in the GG format, and kind of your whole takeaway?
So I'm not going to try to contribute to this sort of tactical discussion of how to play Lady J. I think that Landon and Haku covered it very well. What I do want to touch on briefly is something that we talk a lot about, like very competitive tier lists and stuff on this format because we are competitive players. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that Lady J1 is, I think, one of the best intro masters in the whole game for someone who's learning how to play the game. She teaches you a lot of different aspects of how to play Malifaux, like how to use triggers, how place effects work, how bonus actions work and why they're good, how to make attacks, the different actions you can take. So I think that if you're teaching someone how to play the game, or if you're learning how to play the game, Lady Justice 1 is just a really great master to play for that. And so that's just something I've always really appreciated her for. I think she's one of the iconic masters of the game. She's been around since the very, very beginning of First Edition. And she's always been kind of doing the same thing she does now. She was the very first Nightmare Edition crew. So I think there's just a lot of really cool stuff to recommend about her. With Lady J2, I'm reluctant to get too into details because this is one of the masters that's just so transparently going to eat some pretty significant nerfs that it's kind of hard to see what her playstyle is going to look like once that happens and once things settle down. I like that she's leaning into the Pine Box aspect of playing. I think that the way that she does it is just a little bit too good, and those coffin markers just do a little bit too much, especially given how they're basically free. So I would be interested to see what she looks like when she's been fixed. But sort of in terms of playing against them, you got to know what they're trying to do. Like Lady J1 is an Alpha Strike crew, and the nature of this crew is that you're not going to be able to turtle against it and not lose models to an Alpha Strike. They've got really long range guns. Lady J is extremely maneuverable. So what you really need to do if you're playing into this crew is you need to think about piece trading. You're going to lose models, and you need to do what you can to make the models you lose into trades, because she tends to run a low model count crew that doesn't want to trade 1-for-1 with you. So think about, how can you position your own sort of counter alpha, a beta strike, as it were, to attack her beaters once they've activated and done their damage. And you can think a bit about blunting the attack so that it maybe takes 2 activations to kill something valuable instead of 1, but you shouldn't go into this expecting you're going to keep all your valuable stuff alive. And so, except in like very rare limited circumstances. So you should, I think, instead just try to sort of see what you can do to to like stay in the game after pieces are going down. And that also informs your scheme and your scheme picks. Don't pick schemes that you are going to want your whole crew on the board to be able to accomplish. Pick stuff that you can accomplish with 1 or 2 key models activating at the right time. And with Lady J too, there are some similar things going on just because of her ability to abduct and kill a model. It's not quite the same all in alpha. Just take advantage of the fact that her crew is damaging itself and it's taking models like Death Marshals that are not super tough. And even Death Marshal recruiters are not the toughest model in the world, although they will have leadline cloaks, which makes them really horrible to deal with. So you need to be pressuring her very aggressively. You can't just sort of let her do her thing, because if she is doing her thing, then she's going to not only be abducting and killing your models, but she's also going to be healing all the incidental damage she's taking. And you're not really going to be able to make progress. You need to be pressuring her very relentlessly. But overall, I really like the Marshal keyword. I think it's a cool keyword. It's got really good flavor. It's got some great models. It's got some poopy models. It's got it uses versatiles well. I think it's just a really good. If you're going to pick one crew to kind of summarize what Malifaux is like and what it's about, I think you could do a lot worse than Marshal.
I think more importantly than any other matchup I can think of in the game, you want min 3 beaters into Lady J1, just because it's really important to be able to drop Lone Marshal in 3 hits, and it feels really, really bad to be min 2 into Lady Justice's Hard to Wound, Soul Stones, and Leadline Coat for Armor 1. That just makes that matchup feel unbeatable. If you put in 6 attacks at min 2, and you do 2, maybe you hit a couple moderates, 6 to 10 points, and then she just heals it all back up with Juggernaut and a little bit of healing from something else. So having min 3s is really important to make every hit actually impactful, and to just be able to snipe out some of the actual big beater models she takes. With Justice 2, as I might briefly kind of mentioned in my whole how to play as shtick, take the hit can be really helpful for making sure stuff doesn't just disappear out from under you. So if you have to pay 5 points to make your Ashigaru eat the pine box instead of your Komainu or your whatever your other really important pieces to the list you're playing, that's usually worth it. And then just really pay attention to what models Lady J2 hires. If she's hiring, something other than what I said, if she doesn't have every model being able to hit buried stuff, she buries your guy. Maybe your guy is okay to just sit in the bury zone for a while. Just be aware that if they have Jury or if they have, Justice 2, you're taking 1 to 2 points before you pop out. So make sure you have a plan for that. And just for the love of God, if you're going to try and kill anything in J2, make sure you kill it all the way, because that crew has way too much healing.
Mr. Haku, any closing thoughts? Good, sir?
No, I think actually Landon summed it up pretty well. Take the hit, I think, is the key against Justice 2. I think we're going to see Justice 2 change. I think there's no way she doesn't get nerfed in upcoming nerf bat rounds. It's just to be honest, it's just an unfun playstyle with the bury and coffin shenanigans being blocking and super annoying. That being said, I think you really do just have to focus on big things that just kill things outright. Against Lady J1, much more straightforward, much more simple. It's kill or be killed, baby.
But isn't that literally your entire Malifaux philosophy, Haku?
Yeah, and just get good
I mean, it's
at
done
it.
well for you. You can't argue with your results, but to be fair, that's every time you step on the Malifaux battlefield, I feel is your philosophy, right? I will destroy all of your models.
Think that yeah, I truly think you got to have that mentality for Lady J1 in particular. There's a lot of crews that can play around that with a bit more. Lady J1 though, you truly have to be willing to all in, or you just have to get really good at sniping support pieces. And it's all about knowing the limits of your models. It's much harder than you think, so I definitely encourage people to try it out. It's a great way. I think Lady J1 used to be like my recommended master for most people to learn how to play the game, and I actually think I'm coming back around to sticking by that.
It is
great
literally
way.
my first master.
Yeah,
Marshall was my first keyword. It was what I learned how to play Malifaux with against Sam, and Sam just smashed me in the face with Maw Tucket 1 over and over again in brutal, brutal defeat. But every time I like inched my way up a little bit, and I'd like maybe score a point more each time, and he'd be like, "Good job, you scored 2 points this time. Now die."
And that's
but
how you learn to hate gremlins. Fuck gremlins.
yeah, man, Bayou is bullshit.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Lady J1 is a great starting master if she really teaches you. I think unlike some of the other masters that I think get like bandied around as good starter masters, like Parker, I think that she doesn't teach you bad habits.
Yeah, she makes you even optimizing her activation and understanding how a dual trigger function works, where you both want crit strike and mask, right? Like that's an important fundamental advanced part of gameplay, and understanding how to manipulate that and being like, this is going to require a piece of the combo, one of the cards, and probably a soul stone. And just that's some advanced Malifauxin there at a fundamental level, you know?
The only true downside is I think you can't play keyword based. Absolutely not. While you can definitely run some of the Marshall starter box, you really just don't want to. So it's a great Vassal first master. In person, I do think it's a little wonky what boxes you have to buy in order to play the crew efficiently, at least. I still think you can have a lot of fun with it playing if you're actually a new player playing the Marshall stuff, because Jury's still good. Judge, as much as we memed on, is perfectly fine for someone learning the game.
And we got this sick ass nightmare box coming out.
That's
you
true.
guys mentioned Haku. You make a good mention here, and I want to spotlight this really quickly because 3 of you, shame on me, I am not, but 3 of you guys are in leagues right now digitally, right? The Vassal community is a big deal. It's where Haku and Pope play a lot. They also play in person, but Sam is starting to play a lot more Vassal. Can you guys just really quickly talk about some of the competitive things that are going on that people can follow? Because you can also be watching these games. A lot of Haku's games are recorded, and Sam is starting to record a lot of his games as well. Can you guys just quickly, as a plug, just for the general digital Malifaux community? Because I think there's a lot of folks that don't even know this exists.
Yeah, sure. The Vassal World Series is having its conclusion right now with the top 16. Those are all going to be put onto the Vassal World Series channel. We have our own YouTube channel that we are uploading videos to, so go out and watch that. For that reason, you haven't seen a video uploaded on my channel in a little bit, although I'm definitely going to try to get a couple in there, at least talking about my games, if not the actual games themselves. I'm not sure. I don't think they want us to put those up yet, so I'm going to wait until the World Series is probably over before I put my POV up on my channel. That being said, the team tournament's also going on, and I will be recording some of my friends' games in that. So you may or may not see some of the Pope's games and their team, which is also a couple of good friends of mine. Sam's on that team, and so is Goodman, who is the guy who actually helps makes the module for Vassal.
But yes.
Yeah, he contributes every now and then as well. Yeah, and those are the big areas. We have the Vassal Malifaux Vassal Discord channel you can join. They have their FAQ for the tournament sheets on what rulings, as we kind of talked about with Transmute. There are a couple other those where you can go figure out the rulings for those there on the channel as well as just find a lot of people willing to pick up a game with you, and a lot of people who, even if you're first time playing, would be willing to pick up a game with you, teach you how Vassal works, and really help you get into the game, and give recommendations for crew lists and everything. It's a great community.
Yeah, we also have in the Danger Planet Discord, we have a list building subsection of the Malifaux community where we just share lists with one another and ask for list building advice and stuff like that. So if you guys are interested at all on that side as well. Pope, Sam, anything to plug on your guys' end?
Nothing I can think of in particular. Just, gonna say, yeah, we're playing the team tournament. I've got a particularly salty game to upload at some point in time.
Yeah, between the two
forgive
of
my
us,
conduct.
Landon and I are 1-1-1 in the team tournament so far.
Amateurs.
That's our combined record.
Yeah.
What?
I've played one game and I won it.
I've played 2, so
I'm just giving Landon.
I obviously got the harder games of the bunch.
I was
so
playing
that's
Nick
why I
Westbrook. He's
lost.
good.
There aren't bad players in the Texas Triumvirate, okay?
That's true.
I'm just saying that Brian was the player I played, and he's the player that won, so he's clearly the good player.
That's true.
I think Andre won his game too, so.
Anyways, so yeah, this is Vassal play is a lot of fun. It's a little finicky to get it worked out at first, but when you're someone like me who like works extremely long hours and is has a family and stuff, it's tough to sometimes like to get a whole day to go to the store and play games, and so it's nice to be able to just sit down and play a game from my house. I know everyone on this channel is pretty busy guys too, so we really appreciate being able to just get down and play a game in an evening without having to devote the whole day to it.
Yeah. So thanks, folks. We're gonna keep doing this tier list stuff. We really appreciate the feedback that everybody's been giving us. We really want to make this the easiest to consume and the most helpful content form. So let us know if you have additional suggestions. Like Haku said, we tried to switch it up this time. You're probably going to see this going forward because I think it worked out fairly well. But let us know if you guys have anything else. And we are more than happy to oblige. Thanks, guys. See you next time on the planet.
See you next time.
Peace.